What's going on, guys? Welcome to Feel the Spirit. Today I'm going to be talking about how to aim a traditional bow. So if most of you watch my videos, you'll know that I am an instinctive aimer. I just grip it and rip it. But there's a lot of people that like to shoot gaps. I'll include split vision as an aiming method, but gap, split vision, and string walk or fixed crawl. And fixed crawl and gap shooting are very similar, so I'm going to throw them into the same segment just because they're extremely similar. First thing I'll start off with is split vision, because split vision is probably, it's a like aiming, but it's not. And the way I can explain it is, in instinctive, you just bear down on what you want to hit and you just pull it back, and you don't worry about where anything else is in your vision. You're just looking at that one spot, and the only thing you're thinking about is that one spot. The only way you can shoot instinctive is if you're only consciously aware of where you're hitting. All your form, everything like that needs to be left up to your subconscious, because that is what instinctive is. But subconscious is picking up that arrow tip and using it for maybe a left or right or height. You're not using it to aim. You're not focused on the tip of the arrow. You're still focused on where you want to hit, but you let your focus drift just enough to pick up the tip of that arrow and keep it in the relation of where the target's at. I won't show a demonstration of that because it's pretty easy to comprehend. It's just you consciously pick up in your peripheral vision where the arrow tip is and use it as a relation rather than an aim point. Okay, so I'm just going to do a very quick rendition of what split vision will look like. So say I was going to shoot at that red target right there, the red dice target. So as I pull the bow back and the arrow comes back, right? And say it's about sitting about right there. So all you're doing is you're not using the arrow as an aim point by like putting it there or holding it below, but rather you're just kind of floating around, and your focus is right there where you want to hit on that target, and you just know in correlation that, oh, that's too far right, that's too far left, or that's too high and that's too low. And you just kind of barely pick that up in your peripherals. Shooting instinctive is not looking at any of this, and you're just focused on what you want to hit, and then you let the arrow go. So I'm going to do all my shooting at about, I'm a little over 10 yards because I'm not very used to aiming. As in just an instinctive way of shooting, I'll shoot one shot of how I would shoot instinctively. So it's a little bit to the right. I'm used to shooting that bare ospel right now. This one's cut to center. Bare ospel is not cut. It's cut pre-center. So the arrow pitch is a little bit different. So I was right in line of where I wanted to hit, just to the right. But that's expected going from shooting a pre-center bow to a cut center bow. So, but anyway, that was an instinctive shot. So if I do shoot to the right a little bit in this video, then there's my excuse for it. So now I'm gonna shoot a split vision shot. So I'm gonna hold back for just a little bit longer, and I'm gonna just have an idea of where that arrow tip is in relation to the target. The same spot, just barely to the left a little bit. But again, it was just a split vision shot, and I do shoot split vision a lot actually, just whenever I'm out practicing and just playing around and trying to get used to a new bow, because that way it'll tell me my left and right and high and low and where I need to be holding. So the next thing I'm going to go over is gap and fixed crawl, because they are pretty much the same thing. All gap shooting is how far above the tip of your arrow the arrow hits. So if I have a 10-inch gap at 10 yards, I'll hold the arrow tip 10 inches below the target. So maybe that might be the belly on a deer target, or the bottom of a block target, or whatever you're shooting at. And as you go back, of course, the gap shortens, and you just close that gap with the arrow tip until you get to your point on distance. And then you just hold the point right where you want to be at. With our fixed crawl, the only thing that's different with a fixed crawl is maybe you have a low anchor point. Let's say you pull back the bow and you anchor like maybe low and like right here. So maybe you anchor like this. So you pull the bow back and your anchor is pretty low, right? All you're doing is you're coming down the string, wherever you want to come down the string to, and maybe here closes that gap a little bit. So basically now all I'm doing is, maybe if I did this and held at a low anchor point like this, maybe my gap would be 20 inches. Well, 20 inches is a pretty big gap. You're aiming in the dirt just to hit the target. So what you'll do is you'll come down the string maybe about an inch or so, and you'll put a knock set at that point where you want to hook your fingers at. And as you can see, right here would be up against the arrow. You can see how far the arrow is away from my eye. But now if I come down about an inch and then draw back, you can see how much closer that arrow got to my eye. So it'll close that gap and it'll make it a lot closer of a gap. And it's all it is this gap shooting. You're just holding down the string a little bit. So I'll do some shots and show you how to find your gap and shoot gap. So essentially for a gap shot, what you'll see is the tip of the arrow up against the bow there, right? I can't get it perfect because of all the stuff here in the way. The camera's kind of in the way of everything. But all you're gonna do, let me try to get this out. All you're gonna do for a gap shot, right there is about where I was holding whenever I was hitting in the middle, is just about 3 inches below the target. And then you move back, you might have a gap of like this at the first target, and then you just kind of slowly go up until you get to your point on. All right, so now I'm gonna shoot a gap shot. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hook right up against the arrow knock, and I'm gonna come back to my draw, and I'm gonna use the tip of the arrow as a reference point and see where I hit. So for this first shot, I'm gonna put the arrow tip, just because I've shot this bow a little bit and I kind of know a lot about it, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the arrow tip just below the bottom of the target. And I was pretty much right on. May have just been a slightly low. And I hit the dot. So all I'm doing is I'm holding about 3 inches below the target, which would give me a total gap of about 7 inches. I'm not gonna measure it out every single time, but that was about a 7-inch gap. So all you do is you find that gap by placing your arrow tip in different spots below the target until you hit where you want to hit. And then once you get out to about 20, if you have a low enough anchor point, by the time you get to about 25-30 yards, you'll establish your point on distance. Well, I just realized that I forgot to hit the record button on my GoPro for the gap shooting one. So I'll shoot one more shot and just show you where it hits. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold the tip of the arrow about 3 inches below the target. That one was my fault. Let me do that one more time. Right in the dot. So all I'm doing, holding it about 3 inches under the target and letting it go. Now the next segment is string walking. String walking is easier done on a tab. I don't shoot a tab a lot. I like to shoot a glove. Yoast makes a tab that has lines down the back of it. And what that is good for is it's easy to find which point you're string walk and you crawl down the string to. So basically all you're doing is maybe the arrow's knocked here and you find your point on distance by coming up and down the string with your fingers and bringing the arrow close to your eye. All you're doing is finding your point on distance at every yardage, and then at 10 yards you know how far to come down. If you want to do it with a glove, you can. What I would do is come in like this and maybe hook the string right here. Well, maybe my 10-yard string walk might be the bottom of my middle finger. So I come down here and I set my fingers right where my thumbnail is. And now I am that far away from the knock set, which is right here. Now I'm right there. Let me put an arrow on so you can see a little better. So with the arrow on, you can see I come here, come to the bottom of my thumbnail, or come to the bottom of my middle finger, come down, and now when I draw back, that arrow is going to be extremely close to my eye. Right? So that'll get me a point on distance at 10 yards. And then you back up to 15 yards or whatever. When you back up to 15 yards, it might drop that. Instead of coming down here, you might only come to about the middle of your middle finger. So you can drop down and do it again. And you can see the arrow is just a little bit farther away from my eye than it was at 10 yards, that string walk. And it brings the arrow tip down a little bit, which gives you a point on distance at 15 yards. And then you might go back to 20 and you might come to the bottom of your index finger, and at 25 in the middle, and then your 30 might be point on right here. So all that's doing is you're just using the tip as a point on arrow reference at every single yardage. So I'll go back and shoot a few shots like that as well. For a string walk, you're always going to come back and hold the tip of that arrow in the middle of that target every single time. You're just going to come down the string until you get to the point to where that always sits in the middle of the target. This time I'm going to string walk, and with the gap shooting, all you have to do is just, with the going to a fixed crawl, is if that gap is extremely excessive, you would just shorten your gap by coming down and placing a knock point right there, and then that's where you hook the string and come back with. So it's the same principle. But for string walking, I'm at about 10 yards here. So I'm gonna guess that I'm gonna take my hand like this and I'm gonna put it right at the bottom of the crease of my middle and index finger. So you can see the gap between where I'm gripping the bow and where the knock is. And I'm gonna put the arrow tip dead on the center of the target. I better stand it straight up for this one so I can get the arrow tip more under my eye. So I was just high and a little bit left. So since I was high, I probably need to come down lower. So what I'll do is, instead of between both of them, what I'll do is I'll drop down to the middle of my middle finger. And we'll try that again. So I dropped my bow arm on that one. So I think that one would have been right. I just dropped my bow arm. I'm not used to shooting like this at all. So I am hitting a little bit low. I'm also flying extremely knock high because of changing my point of pressure. So all I would need to do is come in between those two. I need to come in the middle of those two string walks. So instead of in between the bow, in between my index and middle finger, or the middle of my middle finger, I'm gonna go about 3/4 of the way up my middle finger. Still shot a little high. You kind of get the point of what I'm doing here. It's kind of harder to do it on a glove. I think the reason I hit high on that one felt like a good shot. I think the reason I hit high on that is because of the fact that it's not very consistent doing it with a glove. That's why I recommend the Yoast tabs, because they have the lines up and down to see what you're doing. So I'll take a couple shots here at the target just in case anybody's wondering how I shoot. I have other videos on it, but I do change things in my shot pretty regularly until it gets time up the season. I think I'm gonna kind of stick with what I'm doing now, but I will shoot just a couple of shots so you can see what I'm doing. So that was pretty much right there. I'm gonna move the camera angle a little bit. All right, so now you might be able to even see where the pitch of my arrow is. Right in the dot. If you were curious about how I shot, that's just how I shoot. I just kind of look at the dot, pull back and let it go. I haven't shot my Bear Polar in a while. This is a 1953 bow, and it's probably my favorite bow to shoot that I have, and it was completely free. So you don't have to have a lot of money or anything to really get into this, and it's probably the funnest thing I've ever done. So other than that, that's how you aim a traditional bow. Thank you, Lord, for a beautiful day. I really appreciate you guys watching. The support that I've been getting lately is insane, and I love every single one of y'all that support me. And I can't say enough about how blessed I've been. And other than that, can't wait for hunt season to get here. Expect more videos. I try to upload about 2 times a week, so expect more videos. And that's how you aim a traditional bow. Follow me on Instagram, because I don't think I ever say that. It's links are always in the description to other things. And yeah, I guess that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Thank the Lord for a beautiful day, and that I get to come out here and record this stuff for y'all. I hope it helps you, and I wish you the best of shooting and the best of luck. And until next time, y'all keep feeling the spirit always. I think I'm gonna add something to that. I think I'm gonna always start at the end of the video saying always stay positive and keep on feeling the spirit. So that's kind of one of my life mottos. But anyway, I've talked too much. Have a good day. Spirit alive.